start by talking a little bit about your early life, how you got into planning, and sort of what it was like growing up on the west side of Chicago.
Well, growing up on the west side was, I'd like to say it was a treat, but there were times when it was a tragedy because it was a rough area, very rough as a matter of fact. My schooling started in elementary school at Horatio Mayflower School. I set the record for truancy, consecutive days. I think it was 54 straight days, truancy. High school, I went to Austin High School on the west side, and that was a real treat. Austin was #1 in just about every sport. They had great teachers, and that's probably where I started to think most about metropolitan planning, things that could be done for the people of Chicago. From high school, Austin High School, I started my college education at the University of Illinois at Navy Pier. At that time, it was at Navy Pier, 2-year school. From there, went into the Air Force. Well, I went in during the Korean conflict, went into the Air Force, studied meteorology, became a forecaster.
And how do you think meteorology helped you prepare for a career in planning?
Well, I think it helped quite a bit because meteorology is a very active field, and it's not strictly concentrated. It is widespread, which is what urban planning does, or should be. So I think the two go very well together.
What kind of things do you remember about Harry Chaddick, and what kind of influence he had on your life and your career?
Harry Chaddick had some vast influences on my life. Harry was the kind of guy who, if he got into a project, he really got into it. He and his wife, Elaine, used to drive out to all the neighborhoods of Chicago on weekends and make notes of the uses that were there and the uses that should be there. As most people know, Harry Chaddick was involved in the development of a number of shopping centers throughout the Chicago area. The one that I remember maybe best of all was his shopping center at the Brickyard on the west side of Chicago. That was interesting because Mr. Chaddick made it a point to have every citizen, every resident living within 3 miles of the site to be visited, talked to, explained to about everything that would occur at the Brickyard Shopping Center. He did a wonderful job of pulling things together and making people satisfied with the development. Working with Harry Chaddick was an experience.
How's that?
Not always pleasant, but usually very pleasant because I could pick his brain, and there was a lot of picking to go on. This was a very smart individual. Harry was a wonderful person, and I really miss him. I miss him an awful lot.
I've learned so much from Bob, substantively, and as well as what it means to be a professional. Bob, never heard him say an ill word of anyone. He's always comported himself with dignity, and he's just a genuinely nice guy. He's a gentleman. So rare to see that these days, and I just feel proud to know him.
Talk a little bit about the 1957 zoning ordinance.
1957, Harry Chaddick and George Cranenberg and a number of other people involved in Chicago decided that we had to put together a collection of well-meaning, well-thought-out rules and regulations that could be easily followed by architects and planners and developers. When the 57 ordinance introduced things like planned developments, that was such a bonus to developers that meant to do the right thing, because they could come in and they could, in effect, bargain with the city council and the planners and come up with the right thing for the city of Chicago. It really worked beautifully.
Well, I first met Bob in 1968, in December of 1968, when both of us worked at Barton Ashman Associates. He was very open to all the people he worked with, and so it was very simple to collaborate with him and to voice your opinions even when you weren't sure of them as a young planner, where he would see things that didn't fit. He would tell you very gently that you were all wet, and that this isn't the way to do it.
Barton Ashman was quite an experience. I got involved in a lot of work, both planning work and zoning work. It was a fabulous adventure, really. What really stands out most is the attempt by Barton Ashman to join planning, land use planning, with traffic planning. And they were really the first employee-based planning firm to join planning work, zoning work, and just about everything else that involves metropolitan work. Through the years, the planners and the engineers got to doing more work together, and we all discovered that this was the real way to get the job done. You couldn't just have one little circuit over here and another circus over here. We had to work together. And once we started doing that, we found out that's the way to get it done.
So then in 1973, you left Barton Ashman and started your own firm. What led to you going out on your own, and what types of things were you hoping to do on your own that you couldn't do in Barton Ashman?
Well, at Barton Ashman, there was a kind of a constraint that I felt I couldn't do some of the groundwork stuff that I'd like to try. What I wanted to do is show that communities should not just cast their eyes on zoning, nor just take a look at the plans, but check out the building code and the subdivision regulations and property maintenance codes. These are all vitally significant.
He was asked to participate in the formulation of the foundation. Bob was really committed to that, and it took a lot of his time and energy. I thought that was great. I thought that was something that people who care about things and can see what's important and what you can help establish for the community. He was a big part of that.
Talk a little bit about the mission of the Chaddick Foundation and why you think it's so important that the foundation exists and some of the key things it's done over the past few years.
Well, the Chaddick Foundation is really an unusual foundation in that it works in many different areas, not just planning and zoning. It works with school libraries quite a bit, works with hospitals. How is your community working? What do you need? What can an outfit like the Chaddick Institute do to help your community? And how can we get your community to work better with the communities around you? That's really what the Chaddick Foundation wanted to see. They wanted to see all the communities in the metro area work together. If we can do that, if we can pull these communities together on a regular basis and get them to work together, we're going to have a far greater metropolitan area. Mary Rose and Suzanne are wonderful to work with. They were always very inquisitive. That's the main thing about Mary Rose and Suzanne. They had to know how things worked. They had to know how to get things done. And they're still that way, both of them.
It's even hard to talk about the Chaddick Institute without Bob's name coming up, because he's really been our guiding force, in bringing the ideas of Harry Chaddick down to the Institute level. And what's amazing about Bob is, he's just a ton of fun. I mean, Bob is just a blast to have around. But Bob also has like a consistent message he tells us. And every time we do programs, that Bob's sort of voice is always heard, that, Bob was very clear about why this institute had to be something special.
When the foundation decided that we wanted to get into work with universities on the planning end of things. We actually visited something like 7 different universities, and we met regularly with all of these universities. We were actually in that period of visiting universities for over 2 years before we finally focused on DePaul and the people here and the work they're doing. And we discovered that this is the place to be because this is the place that will work well with all the communities. I think as far as I personally was concerned, it was the feeling I got from the people that we talked to here at DePaul, including Joe Schwieterman, that they were not tied to any of the old concepts. What DePaul wanted to do was work ahead into fields and areas that no one else had really looked into. And they were prepared to do that.
I remember lots of conversations that we had about the high school program and Bob's work that he was doing with the community policing and engaging youth, and the work we were doing with engaging youth in some similar neighborhoods as a way to learn about planning. So I always felt like he gave a really good guidance for those programs, continued to bring us back to Chaddick's mission. So it was wonderful as an advisor.
This could be the model, should be the model for not just other universities, but other metro areas. So much has been done here at the Chaddick Institute that other communities could use to fashion their own concepts. And then I think it would be wonderful to work throughout the United States by bringing those concepts together.
When I started at the Chaddick Institute, I heard so much about the infamous Bob Boylan and how much he's done in terms of planning for the Chicago region. And then I had the opportunity to meet Bob just a couple of months ago when Joe Kearney, Schwieterman, and myself went to go and visit him and his wife. And it was a really wonderful visit and great to meet him. They broke out the champagne and we talked about the Chaddick Institute and programming, and also just his history and how much of an impact he's had on the Institute, and really shaping what we do and what we focus on here.
I think the way we got started into dance contests, really, we kind of fell into it. We were at the Midway Hotel. They had some kind of a fundraiser function that we had signed up for. And it turned out that there was a dance contest. We didn't know anything about it. We joined it at the last minute. And we did our dance, and there were about maybe 50 people. Next thing we knew, we were still in the crowd. There were about 10 of us, and we ended up winning. Actually, we started noticing that just kind of by osmosis, we would start wearing the same colors, which we didn't even realize. We go out and people go, oh, look, and we'd be, oh, yeah, I didn't even realize. Yeah. And then we started dressing the same color for dancing, and eventually it kind of eased into the rest of our life, and it's gotten really crazy. But we have fun with it.
Yeah.